Bienvenido a Google Developer Day. Let's see. Un momento. ¿Cómo se llama el año? Is it 2011 o 2011 o 2011? What? Oh, 2011? Okay, great. That's all the Spanish I have. Sorry. All right, so today I'm going to talk about Google App Engine. So my name is Wesley Chun. I'm a developer advocate on the team. And so some of you who do not know what App Engine is, it's going to be a really good overview as to what the platform is all about. And then for those of you who already know a little bit of App Engine, you'll get an update on what are the latest changes and new features that we have. So raise of hands. How many people have already coded App Engine? How many? Okay, that's great. How many people are using it to run their business? Okay, that's good. All right. All right, so hopefully none of this stuff will be too old for you then. All right, so let's get going. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm a developer advocate at Google, and I represent our cloud products. I know most people only know that we have App Engine, but we have a few others, like Google Storage and Prediction, and you will learn about those from my colleague, Chris. He's up here in the audience. So come to his talk tomorrow. Es mañana? Okay, yes. And you'll learn about all these new cloud technologies that we have in addition to App Engine. So I've been a software engineer for more than 20 años. And I was one of the original engineering members of Yahoo Mail. So that was, I don't know, 14 years ago. So I helped build the address book and spell checker. Two things I never use with email. Okay, but that's the way it goes. I like to write and I like to teach. So I have a couple of books if you know Python. And I will also be going to Junin to go to PyCon Argentina in the next few days. So hopefully I'll see you there. All right, so the first part is I'm going to give an overview for App Engine for people who are new, and then I will talk about what has been going on with App Engine over the last 3 years. And then the last part, I'll talk about some of the more recent features that we announced at Google I/O a few months ago. Okay, so let me first talk about cloud computing. So Gartner is a famous American analyst company, and so they classified all of the cloud companies into 3 categories. So the first one is software as a service. So when you see that, you're going to experience an application that is only available through a web browser. You don't install anything on your computer, and you have to have a web browser to use them. You know, unless it's something like, like an email service that you can, pop or IMAP your mail out. But in general, if you want to use Gmail or Yahoo Mail or Hotmail or Salesforce, you have to log into those systems, right? You have no control over the software. And you have to use what the vendors give you. Okay, you can't change it, in other words. So that's software as a service. They're apps that are on the internet only. At the bottom level is the infrastructure as a service. That's where you want to say, I want to rent a machine. I want to rent disk. I'll get networking, I'll get power, I'll get cooling, but you're renting raw hardware. Okay, so Amazon Web Service is a very well-known service for that. Google has some infrastructure services as well. But those are the ones that you'll hear about the most. So either you have software that you can't control, which is at the higher level, or you're getting a piece of hardware and you're responsible for everything else above that. So operating system, database, server, web server, load balancing, software upgrades, patches, and things like that, okay? But in my opinion, and of course maybe I'm biased, but I think the middle layer, which is platform as a service, is the most powerful. Why is that? The reason is because you have a lot more control over the software as opposed to software as a service, because it is the platform, the execution platform. You use a platform as a service to write or to create software as a service apps. Okay, you control the app, all right? But the thing is, all of the other things that you really you should not have to worry about at the infrastructure level is taken care of for you. You don't have to worry about the operating system or database. web server, load balancing, licensing, software upgrades, patches, all those things you do not have to worry about because those things are really not related to the solution you're trying to build, right? So to me, you get the best of both worlds because you don't have to take care of all the hard work. You don't have to be a sysadmin, all right? You just worry about the solution you're trying to provide to the world, all right? So that's why I think platform is the most powerful. Why does App Engine exist? Well, for all those reasons I told you about. All of these things that you have to worry about, which are orthogonal to the solution you're trying to build. So on top of all the things I told you, I forgot to mention, monitoring, reporting, configurations, logs, and load balancing. So I've mentioned all the other things already, operating system, database, web server, and all that, right? So these things get in the way of your solution because even if you create your solution, it's the best in the world. If you don't have any of the rest of it, well, you don't have a solution, right? And it forces you to have to put that together. But we don't think you should have to. All of those things should be available for you, and that's what App Engine does. With App Engine, your apps should be easy to build. It should be using familiar development environments. Your app should be easy to maintain. You shouldn't have to worry about, what if the current version I uploaded, doesn't work. There's a bug. Now I have to roll back. But to roll back, I have to go back to my source code repository system and try and extract out all the correct files and re-upload it, right? But App Engine provides a way to keep like the last 10 versions that you uploaded. So you can just, with 2 clicks of a button, say, I want to go back to the previous version. So you don't have to panic about going back to your source code repository. And then easy to scale is the last part. That's the hardest thing to build, but it's the only thing that comes for free pretty much with App Engine. You don't really have to do too much except for some fine tuning to your application. But Google handles everything else for you. Okay, so you worry about building your app, okay, and let us worry about managing the system for you. So all of those little boxes on the other page, they should all fit in one giant box called App Engine. So you get a development SDK, which includes local development tools like a development server. You have an admin console. And if you're a Java developer, you can use the Eclipse plugin that Google provides. If you're a big fan of NetBeans or IntelliJ, they also have adapters. They're just maintained by a third party instead of by Google. So we maintain the Eclipse plugin. There should be familiar development environments using programming languages that you know, like Java and Python, and pretty soon Go. All right, I mean, we already have Go, but pretty soon you will learn Go. All right, because Google said so. All right, we have a administration console, and then like I already mentioned earlier, there's automatic scaling. And we're always adding new features. We're adding new features so fast that for folks like Chris, for people like me and Chris, even though we are on the team, it's hard to keep up with all the changes because they happen so fast. So we're always working on making the platform better, to add more features, to make it work better for you. All right, so I mentioned before the 3 main languages we support are Python, Java, and Go. So Python was the very first runtime. So that was introduced when App Engine launched 3 years ago. And then 1 year after that, we launched the Java one. And I don't know if you know about the April Fool's joke, but we also said we supported Fortran. But that didn't happen. But we did add Go this May at Google I/O. All right, so one thing is some of you guys who already know how to code in the cloud or using App Engine, you know that you are sharing resources with other apps in the system. Now, you may trust us, but do you trust the developer sitting next to you? Okay, well, what if they could get access to your app or your data? That's not a good thing, right? So that means everything has to execute in a sandbox. You have to run in a restricted environment. So, you can't get access to other people's apps and data, and they can't get access to your apps and data. So, because of that, there are certain things that we don't allow you to do. Like, you cannot create a local file. You cannot make an operating system call. You cannot open a socket. Okay, so those things are restricted. But the thing is, if I can't open a socket, this is a useless app, right? I can't do anything. So the question is, why do you want to use a socket? Well, to communicate with the outside world, right? So maybe you want to send email. Well, so Google was thinking of this already. Why give you some lower level access when we can give you a more specialized API, which is what you want, right? You want to send email. Do you really want to open a socket? No. How about having a higher level email API? Because that's what you want to do. You want to send email. Some people don't know that the App Engine Mail API can also receive email. So you can make your apps get inbound email and you can process them. Okay. Same thing goes for IM, instant messages, chat, or Jabber, XMPP. You can actually send outbound instant messages, but you can also receive instant messages. So you can actually write a bot and fool people because they think they're talking to a person when they're really talking to your App Engine app. All right. So those two things, or maybe you want to like make another call to a different web application, right? So we have URL fetch. So you can like post or get or anything like that if you just want to reach another program. All right. So these are some of the things I give you. Obviously, we give you a database. That's called the App Engine Data Store. It's a non-relational data store that is built using Google's non-relational Bigtable. So there's a public paper you can read about Bigtable there. But think of it as like a big key value store. It's an object store. We also give you Memcache because hitting the data store does take a little bit of time because all of your data is replicated amongst multiple data centers. So Memcache is definitely a faster way of doing it, and the Memcache is shared. It's distributed across the machine that's running your instances. Okay. We also have task queues. Now, the reason why task queues exist is because we don't want you to use up all the resources on the machine, so we do not let your application run for longer than 30 seconds. Okay. You want to have a very fast request and response time. The faster you are with request response, the more we will scale for you. Okay, so that's one of the best practices that you need to remember. Make your application respond very, very quickly. If you have something that takes a long time, you should use a task queue because that's a background job and you have up to 10 minutes. Okay, so sometimes, talking to the Facebook API does take 10 minutes, right? Or it seems like it takes 10 minutes to your users, right? So if you can't run in 30 seconds, spawn off a task queue and return back to your user so your request response is fast. Okay. We also have the images API, so the general stuff you can do with images like rotate, crop, resize, things like that. We also have a blob store, so if you want to serve like media, like audio, video, because you can't put a lot of data in the data store. Every object has a maximum size that's not really big because it's just meant for data. If you want to provide something larger, then you can use blob store and you can store an object up to 2 gigabytes in size currently. And then one of the other things that we provide is authentication. So you can roll your own authentication, build your own system, or you could require your users to have a Google account. But if you want to be a little bit more global, because some of your users may be mad that you're trying to force them to get a Google account, you can use the OpenID service, and that lets you use federated logins. So if they have a login at AOL or Yahoo or WordPress or anywhere else, they can log in. There's another talk that's going on, actually, right now, you're missing it, on the new Google Identity Toolkit, which is a more generalized version of it's more than just OpenID support. So just be aware that there's a newer form of authentication that's coming down the line. And there's plenty more services that are not listed here. These are just some of the older ones, more generic ones that you would start with when you're building an App Engine app. All right, so I mentioned that there's a dashboard. So this is the administration console where you can see how well your app is doing. You can see, how much traffic your app is getting. You can see, whether you're going over quota and how much did you budget and how much is it costing you today. So this resets every day. But it's a good way to keep track of what's going on because, like I said, if you're running in a sandbox, you have less control over your app. So you can't write your own monitoring tool. Right? So you want to have something to take the place of something you would write for your own app anyway. And instead, we've built one for you, and hopefully this is good enough. You can also access your logs and download them if you wish, either from the console or through a command line. All right, so we're trying to give you as much as we possibly can because we took some control away from you. All right, so that's what's App Engine at a high level. Let's talk about how the product has changed over the year, or the last 3 years. So, like I said, we add new features every year. There's so many I can't keep track of, and I know it's very hard to see in the back, but it's not that important. You'll get the slides, okay? We'll make the slides available for you. So you should see that we're always adding new features to the platform. And you can see the user growth has been pretty good. All right, so we finally started to attract the attention of Google vice presidents, okay, when our traffic got to a certain level. So if it's not a Google number, they don't notice. Okay, that's the thing. So a lot of times when people ask us, can Google tell us how much this, how much that? And usually we say, no, we can't tell you those numbers because they're confidential. So what can I tell you about numbers? So what I can say is that there's more than 100,000 developers who use the platform every month. So this is users that are either logging into the administration console, or they're updating their app because they're rolling out new versions and things like that. So these are active developers. If you just don't log in and use the system, well, you don't count, right? You just created your hello world and then you went away. So we don't add you to those numbers. And then we have more than 200,000 active applications every week. So that means 200,000 of all the apps that we have are actually getting traffic. Okay? Like I said, if you just did the hello world, no one's going to find your hello world, so that doesn't count. All right, let me ask you to guess, of all the applications put together, every App Engine application that's getting traffic or even no traffic, how many page views a day do you think we serve? Any guesses? 1 billion? Okay. All right, very good. Very good. 1.5 billion. Okay. That's a lot. It's actually the real numbers for all of these are actually a little bit bigger, but we don't like to say what the real numbers are. So this is the minimum number we can tell you. So as long as you know there's more than 1.5 billion, maybe closer to 2 something. But as soon as it actually passed 1 billion, one senior vice president noticed, and then we got wine and cheese party. And then one more good piece of good news that I'll tell you about in a few minutes. So we have a lot of customers. These are just some of the customers. Some of them are smaller names. Some of them are bigger names like MTV or Best Buy, which is a big American seller of electronics. So a lot of users. Anybody watch The Royal Wedding? No, see, only girls watch it. Because you have to stay up so late, you have to be crazy. But the official blog is hosted on App Engine, and on the wedding day, they had 2,000 requests per second. 2,000 users are hitting your application every second. That's a crazy number, okay? And we also had 15 million page views and 5.6 million visitors. So interestingly, so the blog had been around for many months before the wedding, but there was a special website, another App Engine app that was made just for the wedding day, and that was the YouTube live stream, okay? They had a few more visitors than we did on the blog. They got up to 32,000 requests per second, okay? And when they got to the Bezos, it was another 10,000 on top of that. So it was 42,000 because it was repeating, right? And so everybody was turning on, the live stream for some reason, all right? And they had 37.7 million page views and 13.7 million visitors. So if you want to read more about the numbers and how the whole thing happened, you can use the short link here. Okay, so so App Engine is not really something that is built for free and cheap hosting. It's for when you need to build an app that needs to scale like these numbers. All right, so that's just the one thing that's different. If you need free, cheap hosting, you can find PHP hosting pretty easily. All right, when you need to build a real app because you want to support a real, serious application for a lot of users, and you don't want to crash if somebody /dots you or something, then that's when you consider App Engine. We also have another company called Web Filings, and what they do is they make a financial application in the cloud. So I don't know if you know too much about American business, but the large companies are required to turn in their accounting statements to the government every year. And you can understand how exciting that is, right? Numbers, spreadsheets, CSV, very boring stuff. So they built this whole thing in the cloud, and so it makes it so easy that all of these really big companies are using it to help send this required information to the US government. So these are enterprise companies. They trust Web Filings. Web Filings trusts App Engine. So in addition to Web Filings, I already mentioned Best Buy is another company that has built a lot of applications using App Engine. They have an entire team, actually. Even though they just sell electronics, they actually have an engineering team, and they build App Engine apps for their website. So all of the apps we looked at so far are showing you examples of web applications, things that have user interfaces. But there's another use case that people don't really talk about that much, and that is non-user-facing websites, like apps that run on mobile phones. Well, you have the same situation if you want to have your app run in the, have a backend, right? A backend system. Either you have to build it yourself and host it yourself, or you can go cloud and use App Engine, because for users, let's say you wrote a game and you have high scores. Well, do you want to really keep all that information on the phone? Because, what if they drop their phone, or they go to Sao Paulo and they get mugged? Okay, that's not good, right? Because when they get a new phone, their high scores are gone. So you want to give your users a better experience. So you want to put this information somewhere else other than the mobile phone, right? So a good backend system to use is App Engine, because you can put the high scores there, or context, or leveling, or medals, or whatever, right? Something to give your user a good experience, so that if they buy another mobile phone, they have all their scores with them, right? And also, maybe you want to let them look at their high scores because they're competing with their friends using a web browser at home, because they may be charging their phone, downstairs. So, it's just one of those things where if you want to give your users a good service, you should consider putting some of your data in the cloud. And you don't have to have a UI to use App Engine. All you have to do is just do HTTP, okay, or even XMPP, but that's really just on top of HTTP anyway. Right? Everybody understand that? Right? It's a good place for non-web apps too. Okay? All right, and so there's a lot of gaming companies that use App Engine as a backend to store this data. So it's exactly this use case that I described. All right, so one of the other things I have to talk about is vendor lock-in, because this is something that everybody asks when I go speak at enterprise conferences or business conferences. They're always worried that, oh, we're going to force you to use Google APIs, and we're going to force you to keep your data inside App Engine, and you can never have it again. It's ours. Not quite true, okay? So if you don't know what vendor lock-in is, it's basically the situation where the system makes it very hard for you, or impossible for you, to take your data and or your application somewhere else to another similar system. So does this apply to App Engine? Sort of. Yes and no. You really don't get something for nothing. So the main idea is you want to take advantage of all this hard work that Google has put in to build a system that scales like how I described. Because that stuff is really hard to build. You have to have really smart people, and you have to spend a lot of time doing it. So you really want to take advantage of that, and you don't want to pay for it, right? So the problem is, in order to use it, because we built it to work in our data centers and not any generic hosting site, you have to use our APIs, right? So you can't get something for nothing, right? You have to pay a little bit of a price, all right? But we still try to fight vendor lock-in as hard as possible. So we don't force you to use Google APIs necessarily. Okay, that's the easiest way to get access to App Engine, though. All right, you don't have to use the web framework that it comes with. For example, the Python version of App Engine comes with Web App, which is a small web framework, but it doesn't have a lot of features. So if you are a big, Python developer and you would rather use another web framework like Django or Tipfy or Bottle, you can go ahead and use those, because those run on top of App Engine as well. Similarly, to get access to the data store, you don't have to use Google's database API. If you are a Python developer and you do Django as well, if you use the Django non-rel patch, you can actually just write Django normally using Django's ORM. And the Django non-rel layer, the Django App Engine layer, will actually handle talking to the App Engine data store for you. So if you start your app using Django non-rel and you're running on App Engine, and later on you want more control, maybe App Engine isn't the right thing for you, you can actually take your app and drop it at any other traditional hosting that runs Django apps, and all you have to do is change your configuration file. So we did not lock your app in. All right. Same goes for your data. We have a data store bulk loader that uploads and downloads your data, so you can take your data out. All right. So we're trying to break this vendor lock-in thing. All right. And I'm sure there's certain solutions that work in Java as well. Now, so the SDK is already open source. The client side, it's open source. And so, people are wondering, well, what if I want to run my own App Engine in my own data centers? What if I want a private cloud or a hybrid cloud? So there are open source versions. They're supposed to be, backwards compatible, or they're supposed to be API compatible. So these are AppScale, which is a project from University of California in Santa Barbara, and Typhoon AE. So those two are sort of competing projects, but they help, they simulate the App Engine backend, and they're supposed to be compatible, the API compatible. So you can actually host sort of your own version of App Engine if you want. All right. Maybe we can lower the lights a little bit in the front so that people can see better. Okay. The other thing that's important to businesses is compliance. So they want to make sure that your data and your application are secure. Okay. So we just got our certification for SAS 70. That's in the US. The new name of the SAS 70 is actually SSAE 16. And then the international standard is ISAE 3402. So if you just Google for any of those, you'll find out what type of security compliance those standards are. And so we meet those standards now. Okay, so it's good for business as well. All right, so one of the exciting things I want to tell you about, besides getting a wine and cheese party when we hit 1 billion page views, is Google now is confident enough that App Engine can be its own product. So we are not going to be canceled. So we are leaving preview towards the end of this year. And when it becomes a full product, if for some reason it really doesn't work out and Google wants to cancel it, you have 3 years before we actually shut the system down. So there's a guaranteed time. So so that's good news. Also, for businesses, they want to have guarantees that we're going to have good uptime. Okay, so we're going to introduce a 99.95% SLA for users who pay for the service. And we're also going to provide support for the highest level of service. And like I said earlier, we're also adding features all the time. If you look at the web page and you go to the public roadmap, you can see what those things are. And I actually have a slide with a few of the important ones that we're coming out with. One important thing to know is that, like I was saying, we have a hard time keeping up with the releases and the new features because they come out every 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, they happen so often that it's just hard to keep up ourselves. All right, so just keep an eye out for it. App Engine never stands still. Okay. All right, so what does leaving preview mode mean? Well, so again, there's a long-term commitment by the company to the App Engine product, which means that we can give our customers a long-term commitment as well. And enterprises can believe in it because a lot of those features that used to be in this other product it's called App Engine for Business was App Engine plus a bunch of things that businesses wanted. We figured everybody wanted them all based on the feedback, and so we rolled all those features into regular App Engine. So you also get an SLA, and you also get there's improved terms of service for business-oriented companies. If you want to read more about this announcement, then the website is right there. Okay, you'll have all the slides, so you don't have to worry about it right now. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to let you know is right now, while we're in preview beta mode, there's only 2 levels of service: free and not free. Okay. In the next version, we're going to have free followed by 2 paid classes of service. One is the simple one, generic one, where it's $9 per app per month. This is $9 US, so I guess that's near a little bit more than 36 here. But for premium users, they're going to pay $500 a month, but you get unlimited apps. Okay, so you kind of pick which one's right for you. So as long as you're one of these 2, then you get an SLA. If you do the premium, then you get support. Okay, and then we're going to add special features like a custom domain SSL, which is another additional monthly fee on top of that. Okay, so it'll be like this. If you want to see the current pricing, the nearly free pricing, which is sort of not realistic, you can take a look at the web page there. If you want to find out more about the official pricing, you can look there. And then there's a whole bunch of FAQs because people are wondering, like, why is the pricing so expensive? But it's really not that bad, all right? If you compare it to, the same system that you build on Amazon or any other competing service, and you add the cost of a sysadmin on top of that, it's not that, it's going to be more. Same goes for other systems like Heroku or whatever. I think generally, we did a lot of research, and generally the pricing is still, it fits in line with the market share. And pricing, actually, I think the pricing is still a little under market, but we want to make it accessible to everybody. It's just that in order for the company to run the service, which is it's not cheap, we need to be able to recover the cost and also make some money on top of that too. All right, so a lot of FAQs, so you can read those links once you get access to the presentation. So the things that are mostly changing about pricing is we're no longer charging by raw CPU. It used to be as long as your app uses some CPU, we'll charge you for that. Now, you have to realize that is when your app is actually running on a machine, or whether you're getting traffic or not, it's actually taking up resources. So we're just asking you to pay for whenever your app is into the system, and you're using computing resources, not necessarily CPU. It could be disk, it could be memory. We ask you to pay for that. Okay, and then the APIs will charge you on every operation that you use. So it's still sort of pay as you go. All right. And one of the things that people should do is if you have an existing application and you feel that, so right now the side-by-side billing is turned on so you can see what it will look like with a new billing. If it seems like it's a little too much, you should definitely tune your app. There are ways to reduce your usage so it's not as big of a difference, okay? That big difference is only if you don't make any changes. So there's an article we have that shows you how, gives you hints and clues on how to tune your app. The main idea is to reduce the total number of instances of your app that's running, as well as reducing how many data store calls you make. If you make those two changes, then the price is actually going to roll down quite a lot. And there's actually some blog posts out there already that say, what are you guys complaining about? Look, I did it. Why can't you guys do it? Stop complaining and start tuning. Okay. All right. So now the last part, which is what are the recent changes that has come to App Engine, and perhaps what are some of the features that we're going to add in the future. So we added the Go language runtime. So this is the third language. It's available. The SDK is available for Mac and Linux right now, and we're working on bringing it to Windows. Using the SDK tools is very similar to using the Python tools. All right, the same command line, nearly the same name, even commands to upload your app and to run the dev server and things like that. So we announced it at I/O, and it became official in production in July, and you can take a look at those links to find out more about that. We also added the high replication data store at the beginning of the year. So the original data store is called master slave, but as our users grew and the traffic grew, it became not as reliable as we would have liked. So we added high replication. And this is where your app is written to multiple data centers at any time. It uses the Paxos algorithm for higher availability, and generally, it gives users better service because your app is not going to experience as much downtime or read-only periods as using the master slave. So originally, when we released it, it was 3 times the cost of master slave, but we want to change that because we think everybody should be using it. So I'll tell you more about that on the next slide. So the writes are a little bit slower because you're actually having to write to multiple data centers before you get control back. But the reads are about the same, okay? And the data stored is eventually consistent. That means that when you make a write, when you do a read right away, you may or may not get that updated data. Okay, so for certain apps, that's not important, like the latest scores of a football game that's going on, right? You don't have to have the exact moment, because sometimes it takes a while before a goal is scored anyway, right? But if you really have to be able to read your own write, then you can use ancestor queries to get it strongly consistent. So you do have an option, okay? So the high replication data store is now the default, and it's had really good service since then. We've actually had a bunch of downtimes for the rest of the year, but those only affected the master-slave applications. All right, so we recommend you use it very strongly. Again, it used to be 3 times higher cost than master-slave, but we're actually going to reduce that price, and then we're going to raise the price of master-slave to really try and get you to not use it. Okay. And right now, migration requires a little bit of assistance, and there will probably be a read-only period, meaning that your app can't write to the data store. So your app will still be up, it's just that it's read-only, all right? So we're working on better migration tools so that it'll be easier for you to migrate, so that you'll be able to migrate on your own, okay, without our help, and perhaps little or no downtime or read-only period. Okay, so those are the goals for the new migration tools. Okay, so those are actually rolling out. We have some people testing them right now. Another service we added is backends. So you know how I said your application will terminate after 30 seconds? And if it takes longer, you should use task queues because that goes up to 10 minutes. Well, what if you really need more than 10 minutes? What if you just want to be on all the time? Okay, so that's what backends are. They're basically your App Engine app running on a server that may not go down. Okay, that it just doesn't get swapped out. Okay, even if you're not getting traffic. All right, so this breaks the 30-second or 10-minute deadline. All right, and you can actually configure these machines. So you can choose, how much memory you want or how fast the CPU is, and probably how many CPUs that you have. I think it can run forever. There's two different kinds of backends, either resident or dynamic, and they can also be public or private. In other words, you can actually address them using an actual host name. Okay, and they're pretty easy to configure. You just set up, a YAML file on Python or XML file on Java, and then you can read more about those at those links down there. We added pull queues, which is an alternative to the task queues I was talking about, spawning a background job. So the spawning of the background job worked like, oh, you have something you want App Engine to execute, so you just send all those things to the task queue, and then they execute them as fast as possible. The pull queue is a little bit more flexible. You choose when things get executed, and you also choose how things go into it and when things come out of it. So it's done by a REST API, meaning that you can have your App Engine app or some other external app put a task in the pull queue, and then you can have your App Engine app or another external app pull those tasks and use them. So you have full control of how they go in and how they go out. And App Engine can be your App Engine app can either be the producer or the consumer. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's pretty flexible. All right, and you can of course control access as well. So you can read more about that at that link down there. Okay, so they're just a more flexible type of queuing system. So what else are we going to work on coming up? So we have a public roadmap, and it's available at this URL down here. And Google as a company doesn't like to pre-announce things that don't exist, just because other companies that do that end up getting in trouble. So if it is on our public roadmap, that means there's at least one engineer actively working on that feature today. There may be more than one. Okay, so some of those things we already mentioned, coming out of preview, becoming an official product, getting SSL on custom domains, not appspot.com, having better backup and restore or import-export for the data store, map reduce, full text search. And it's not just text, you can also do searches on data as well, like dates and time, things like that. Python 2.7, that's a really big change that's coming out before the end of the year. We've been running on 2.5 ever since we released 3 years ago, and some people felt that 2.5 is pretty old. And in fact, 2.6 came and went, and so 2.7 is the next, hopefully the last version of Python 2 to ever be released. So that will be good for a while until Python 3 comes around. Better monitoring and alerting, and of course providing more quota for people. So those are some of the things we're actively working on. Oh, is it? So customer says it's a little bit warm in here, so maybe we can turn on the air. That would be great. All right. So what did I talk about this last half hour? I mentioned that App Engine is a platform as a service. It's a hosting service that allows you to host scalable apps in the cloud. Use familiar environments to build your App Engine app. And it runs on Google's high-performance infrastructure. And in the short 3 years that's been around, it's gotten a lot of users and a lot of traffic. I already mentioned some of those numbers earlier. You can build both web and non-user-facing apps, like mobile, game, enterprise, retail. There's a lot of dating services written in App Engine, actually, personal sites. I guess everybody has the same problem. So weddings, okay, lots of different apps you can build on App Engine. It's exciting because based on how many users we have and how excited developers like you guys are about App Engine, we're leaving preview and becoming an official product. So there's more formal pricing, there's an SLA, there's support, there's commitment by Google to App Engine and then App Engine to users. And we're always adding new features every 4 to 6 weeks. So we just came out with 1.5.4, but we're already working on 1.5.5, and that should be coming out within a few weeks. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk. Any preguntas that I won't understand and Sebastian will help me translate? Or you can practice your English on me. That's probably the better way of doing it, since your English is definitely better than my Spanish. Can you repeat the question?
Why do you change the billing?
Why do you change the billing?
Pricing.
Oh, pricing.
What between CPU to the type of instance?
Okay, so as I mentioned in the talk, the main reason for this is because when your instance is running, it's taking up resources. So right now we only build by CPU, but if your application is running, and if an instance is running and you're using resources, even if it's not CPU, you're costing the company money. So we're charging you for the time that your app is running. So that's the reason for the price changes. Is Python 3.0 out of the question? Well, hopefully 3.0 is out of the question. Maybe not 3.2 or 3.3. But currently, Python 3 is not on the roadmap yet. If you come to PyCon Argentina, I can tell you more about Python 3. But pretty much, when Python 3 becomes widely adopted, then we'll take a closer look at it. I can guarantee you that that Google is thinking about Python all the time. The App Engine team is thinking about Python all the time. So it's not like we're ignoring it. It's not like we're dropping support. The creator of Python is an engineer on the App Engine team. So we're not going to let Python fall away. Okay? We can't let the Java people take over. Is there a chance to add another language in the future? Actually, with Ruby, you can actually run Ruby using JRuby on the JVM. So I didn't have a slide, but if you have a language that runs on the JVM, then you can use it. So Ruby will be run by JRuby. JavaScript will be run by Rhino. PHP will be run by Quarkus. But for those of you who are PHP developers, it's not like regular PHP. It's PHP, but you have to use the data store. So you have to use like JDO, JPA from the Java side to get access to it. You can't write raw SQL. But outside of that, the performance is actually supposed to be pretty decent. So you can look at the blog post if you're a PHP developer. You can also run Scala and Groovy. Also, you can do Python, believe it or not, using Jython. So a lot of people ask, well, why would I want to use Python, Jython? Because I can use the pure Python API. Well, the main reason is, if you spend a lot of time and years building up big Java classes that you don't want to rewrite to Python, you can write your new classes in Python and then have Jython run it, because Jython is cool. It's just Python on top of the JVM, so you can instantiate Java objects and Python objects and make them talk to each other. So Jython is a pretty cool tool. So anything that runs on the JVM you can do. But other than that, we don't have any plans right now to add more languages. Okay.
What about Grails?
Grails, I don't know about. I don't know about.
You brought like a demo, like, I don't know, 1 year ago, and no more news.
I can find out from the person I know that will know something about that and get back to you. So, there was another question over there? Wait, uh-huh.
What do you think of the new Facebook service to compete with the App Engine? I don't know nothing about that.
Actually, no say. Yes. Okay. That's a really good question. Are we eating our own dog food? Are we using App Engine to build internal apps for the company? The answer is most definitely C. In fact, which ones? A lot of HR apps, a lot of internal apps to help users manage. Like we have like internal training apps. We have a bunch of HR apps. In fact, yeah, Panoramio. YouTube is like 95% Python. So there's definitely a lot of App Engine in-house. In fact, the CIO of Google, Ben Fried, he's actually given 2 talks, one at I/O last year and one at I/O this year, on how we use App Engine to build internal apps. So you can find those videos and listen to like 50 minutes of what we use inside Google and we build with App Engine. ¿De todos? Any más?
En el caso de una empresa, hacer una aplicación sobre AppNG, sobre la plataforma, la manera de hacer un backup de los datos, ¿qué tenés que hacer? ¿Una aplicación propia para exportarlo?
He's asking about how to do backups when you have built an enterprise application. What are the tools to do a backup of the data and take it out?
There's lots of different ways of doing it. Right now we're working on, like I was saying on the roadmap, that we're working on improved tools to make backup and restore easier. Right now you have to do a bulk download of all your data, either by command line, probably by command line, yes. The bulk loader is a command line tool. You can use to download all of your data. Some of the things that users have done, users are very creative, okay? Some people use another App Engine app to back up their app with. So when they do one data store, right, they spawn a task queue to write the same data to another App Engine data store. Another user writes it externally to an external MySQL. Okay, so there's all kinds of solutions that you can build, but we're working on better tools ourselves. We just don't have one today except for the bulk uploader and downloader.